Hi and welcome to Biteable Live. My name's Gerard and today I have a very special guest. We're joined by Kayli, who's part of our, part of our studio team. So welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? So good to be here.
Sorry for calling you Kayli. That's a terrible start.
All good. Happens all the time. All good.
Why that's so special is I think, everyone uses Biteable and we use the scenes, but we don't get to meet the animators behind the scenes. And so today we're really lucky that we get to speak to an animator so that we really get to understand the science, the art, and all the hard work that goes into the scenes that you use every day. So I'm going to learn a lot today. I know you're going to learn a lot today. And hopefully at the end of it, you really get an appreciation for how much work the guys in the studio team put into the animations that you use in your Biteable videos. So just some basic housekeeping things. We are live, which means if you drop comments in the comments below the video, I'll pick them up. Hopefully you take the opportunity while you have one of the Biteable animators here to let them know what you like, what you don't like, ask the questions. This is your opportunity to use live for what it's designed to be, which is live. It's interactive. If you don't have a question, that's great. Just send us a little thumbs up or a love heart emoticon. That makes us feel good. It makes us feel like we've got a reason for being here. So appreciate that. Today, and of course, we'll finish off the show with Biteable in the Wild, and we're going to go through one of the videos with you at the end. Of course, if you'd like your Biteable video featured, please drop that in. If we get a chance at this show, we will. If not, one of the future shows, and we'll try to cover it. So enough from me, because I'm not that interesting and I'm not an animator. So we're going to throw straight to Kayli, and I'm going to start by asking you, I guess, a fairly simple question with a lot of different answers, but how do you get into animation? How did you get your start?
Wow, there's a lot of ways to get into animation. You can definitely go down and study it, so that's more the uni route. There's a lot of self-learning that people do. I actually kind of stumbled my way into animation. It was very strange. I started my career out as a graphic designer, and so I worked at a furniture company to start off with as a graphic designer, and then moved on. And then moved on to different agencies, and while I was spending my time as a graphic designer, I was already making the designs, making the content, and I think one of the first things that I animated actually was a little swing tag, and I made it move from left to right, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I love this so much, and it just led me down the rabbit hole, and now I'm an animator. So there's a lot of ways to get into animation.
So a price tag, swinging on a bit of furniture, that was the moment. That you turned around and now you're animating for thousands of people who use Biteable. So
yeah, awesome. Pretty crazy.
So how does that, I think it's interesting for everyone outside of Biteable to understand what a project or a day in the life of the animator is like. Like where do you start? When you're starting a new piece of work, how does that arrive to you? What do you need to do?
There's also quite a few ways for a project to start. I guess one of the most basic fundamentals is we start with a brief, and briefs usually come from our creative director and our producer trying to find what our users are looking for. So if we get a lot of comments saying, look, we really want this thing, or we really want this style of animation, we definitely take that all on board, and usually
the tip here is to drop the comments below in the chat, suggest things, because Kayli's right here, and you might be influencing the next piece of Biteable video that comes out. Right.
That's it. This is a really good opportunity. So if you want some sort of specific animation that we haven't got, put it in the comments below, and hopefully we can get that on board. And that usually goes in through a brief, and a brief is different in every agency, every company. Ours is pretty loose, so we like to keep everything sort of open so the animators can kind of have fun with it, which is really awesome. So once we get a brief, it could be like create this set of animations, which we call a stack, and then we'll do some style frames for it, we'll create some assets for it, and then we'll animate and throw it into the abyss and see if people like it or not.
And I was just going to jump in. So John Lewis has jumped in with the question. So how do you decide to choose template designs? I guess you've kind of covered that a little bit, but is there a chance that stuff gets thrown away? Is there reasons or justification that means if it does X or Y, it's definitely going to get chopped and thrown into the bin?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's with a lot of jobs and a lot of creative jobs in particular. But there's a lot of stuff that we make that don't make it to the end, and that's just part of the process. Like a lot of it is just refining. Sometimes it's adding more things in. Sometimes it's taking away stuff. And really, at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to ask a question back to ourselves: does this match the brief that we were given? And really, does it look good, and do we like it, and does it feel surprising and fantastic and amazing? But yeah, making sure
really qualitative values. Is it surprising? Like,
yeah.
How surprised was I?
I know this is the animator in me. I just love it. But I have to feel joy and emotion when I'm animating and when it's done. So for me personally, that's the kind of brief that I set to myself. But definitely throughout the process, we have to make sure if it's matching the brief, and if it is, then we'll keep it. If it's not, then we're trying to tailor it to make sure that our users get exactly what they want, and that we're pushing ourselves to make a good product as well.
Fantastic. I've got another question. I know we sort of Q&A at the end, but while the questions are coming in, we may as well do them here. And Dewani has asked us, how long does it take to create a design? So effectively, how long is a piece of string?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Everything is different. Some days, it could take half an hour to create a style that I really, really like. Sometimes it'll take me a day. Sometimes it even might take 2 days. It really depends on the type of design. If it's something that I'm super comfortable with, something that I've done before, it's a lot easier. If I'm delving into a whole new style, then I really like to set aside time in research and just make sure I understand the style a little bit more, try and break it apart in my head, and then, kind of work it out myself. And so that obviously takes a little bit longer to do. So anywhere in that kind of range is usual. But
because you've got scenes, which are like an individual frame, and you might be able to roll a bunch of scenes out, but the actual stack and the whole process, that could be weeks that go into that or more.
Totally. So I guess when I'm designing for a scene, which is an individual frame, I guess, the first one is definitely the hardest. So the first one is like, oh, we really got to perfect this and got to work it out. The second one is the second hardest, because you've already kind of worked out the style, and then it does get progressively easier from there because you've already established something. I guess it's kind of like, if you've never baked a cake before, the first one will be hard, but then the second one you've kind of got it. So I do like it when I can create a lot of scenes for one stack, because I can really get a feel for the personality of the stack and how I want to create it. And it's actually just really rewarding seeing like a whole bunch of things that you've made, and because you can make it faster now that you've fully understood the design. It's just it's really great seeing it.
Brilliant. And it's not a question we need to answer, but John's throwing in that he wants more fitness type things. So you've been heard. We've now mentioned it live, John. So if something for fitness comes out, then you know that you've probably influenced that. So drop it in first. So we've done really well.
Awesome. I love the idea of fitness as well. I'm totally on board with that. Love it.
I can see. There's a real justification. It's simple. It's one word, but we talk about use cases, and use cases make a lot of sense. So we're going to look at a couple of different stacks that Kayli has designed. And our goal is, what we're going to try to do, you watch me not be able to find the button I needed to find, but we're going to try to run a poll and let everyone who's live vote on which of these stacks they like the best. So I'll attempt to find the poll button at the same time as Kayli runs us through, but we're going to be looking at, that's right, 3 stacks that you've designed, and that's right, isn't it?
Yep, these are 3 stacks that I've designed, and you'll see it now, I guess.
Fantastic. So you go to a screen share, and I'm going to look for the poll button, and then I'll explain it after I find that button.
No worries. I will screen share right now. Okay, I hope that's all working properly. So this first one is called Pop-Up. and this is the stack. I really love this stack. I think it's super bright, super fun. The colors used are super bold, and I think a lot of businesses can get a good use out of this stack. Making this stack was actually hard in the fact that it was a real challenge to make sure that we didn't put too much in. And so when we were stripping back this stack, we also had the challenge of, okay, we don't want to take too much away from it either and completely strip it. So it was a balancing act of getting exactly the right look and feel at the end of the day. And I think, a stack like this would be really awesome for anything in music, tech, anything creative, maybe agency or any sort of general business. I think this one is really fun, and a lot of people who aren't afraid to use bold colors will really enjoy this one.
Yeah, I love that one. It's a great one. What's that one called? That's
Pop Up.
Pop Up. Fantastic.
Yep. All right. Okay, cool. So this one is called People Explainer, and so I'll just run you through it. So People Explainer was really my answer to our users wanting more characters, because characters are super popular, but a lot of the characters that we supplied were super cartoony, and so this was a good step away from that to get a different design for a different audience. And I think characters are just so successful and so awesome because you can really portray a lot of emotion from them. I think, if you want to express anger, frustration, happiness, joy, it's really, really easy to get that across with a face. And they're just really appealing as well. And so, with this one, I wanted to make a whole lot of characters. We ended up going with 4 characters, and we tried to make them as diverse as possible. So in the process of developing the characters, we had to make certain selections, which I'll run through later. I think this stack would be super awesome for anything in hospitality, food, maybe education, and those kind of industries would super love this stack.
That's awesome. And so what's the third stack you're going to show us that you created?
Cool. The third stack that we're going to have a look at is called corporate. So these are the corporate scenes. And so this is the stack. So I think this is definitely one of the more professional scenes that we've got, but I wanted to make sure that it still had an element of fun and life to it. So it's definitely a mix of professional with a little bit of energy and fun. And so, there was a few challenges in this one, getting the overall whooshy things that I made to look 100% right.
Whooshy things, that's a technical term, right?
That is a technical term. Yeah, it is. If you look it up, you'll find it. And so I think this one will be awesome for real estate, anything, maybe law, education, finance, investment companies. I think you can use this for any of those industries. This one's really awesome because it's got some 3D iPads, some 3D phones, and I think having them in is a really good way to show technology. So if you have a brand that uses a lot of tech, that's that might be a scene that you like.
Fantastic. Well, brilliant. Thanks for showing us those. So for everyone who's watching, the key thing to get here is that these are scenes and stacks that Kayli has produced for us. So this isn't. There's a team of people, but you're seeing the artist here who's actually designed and built these. So next time you're pulling out one of these scenes, you can now go, I now know the person who did all the work behind it. So I'm still trying to find my poll button, which I knew I wouldn't be able to find when I was doing it live. So we'll see how we go with that. But while we do that, it'd be awesome, Kayli, to jump in now and maybe look at a little bit of the science and the hard work behind how you create these scenes. So a real dig behind what you actually do. So I think you've got a few things to show us there.
Yeah, I do. I'll just show you now. So this is sort of a little bit of an insight into my process and Bitable's process, although I have to say every single animator is different. So definitely people do things very differently. So this is just sort of the way that I do it. So once I grab a brief, I definitely love to start working on a style frame. And so essentially this is just a still of how how the video could potentially look as finished. And so one that I want to be diving into is the people explainer, because I think we can get a lot of good value out of this stack. And so the first image, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but the first image on the top right is kind of how the stack started looking. So obviously extremely different to what it ended up looking like. The 4 options at the bottom were sort of how it ended up looking at the end of the style frame process. And so what I wanted to do specifically, working for Biteable, we have a lot of users with their own branding colors. So I wanted to make sure that this stack looks good with different colors, because people can change it. Whereas a lot of other animators, when you work for a studio, you choose the one color and you're good. Whereas we do have an extra challenge of making sure that multiple colors look good.
And that's the value, right? Like, we see a lot of the comments that come through customer support tickets and people are talking about colors and more options, but when I see it laid out like this and I realize that you're designing in all the multiple colors at the same time, you realize how much work's gone into what you've actually produced. So I'm hoping that everyone watching live and in the recording kind of really do appreciate that, you have to consider every color combination when you're designing these stacks.
Yeah, sometimes it can be really challenging because if you've got like maybe a pastel pink, I mean, it's really difficult for that to look good on, like a pink or a red background, or, a lot of people find that, a lot of colors clash as well. So even if you do choose another color, maybe if it's too strong, it will clash. So yeah, we try and make sure that all of the assets will look good as best we can with as big of a range of colors as we can. And so I guess a bit of that is selecting what colors we're able to change and what colors we're not able to change. So that's something that we definitely do try to analyze. So for example, the character, I made her her clothing mostly neutral. So it's a lot of gray and a lot of white. And that helps because a lot of the backgrounds are, full color. So, having that sort of separation. And I guess, the background itself is one of the colors that we've selected to change. And a lot of our users really like the background being the color you can change. And so that's definitely something that we've worked with. And I like that myself as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay.
So I guess once we do a style, it gets approved and we're good to go. And so that essentially means creating the assets now. And so we'll, get into an asset creation program and we'll start building. And so you can either just build your asset and leave that on a layer. I think characters are probably one of the more complicated things. You do have to break everything down. So every single character that we have, we break it into different layers. So the nose is on a layer, the glass is on a layer, the cheeks, the mouth, the eyes, every single thing. Because when I take it into the animation process, I have to think beforehand, okay, what things do I want to be moved? What things do I want animating and all that sort of stuff? And
the T-pose, explain, is the T-pose literally what it is? Is it named because they're standing in a T?
Yeah, so the arms outstretched and the body straight is literally just a T-pose. So, it looks like a T. And you can have T if you want while you're making this as well. But yeah, so the T-pose is essentially what I think of as a super neutral pose. I don't want to start with the legs bent. I don't want to start with the arms in a certain way because when I take that in, a lot of the times you can use different parenting techniques and puppeting and however you want to animate your character, but it's a really good way to start so that if I'm rotating the body, I know exactly what the neutral position is. So, if I've got a +10 rotation, I know that it's moved from the center, and having the characters all in the same pose at the start just helps for a really smooth process. If you have characters that are similar, a good way of having them all in a similar pose too is you can actually replace assets and it kind of help to make animation faster. Although when you do have different body shapes, that is harder. But yeah, essentially T-pose is just a super neutral, super easy way for me to see how I'm going to put this thing together when I take it into animation.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you.
No worries. And then I guess so then we animate it. So I've just got a few examples of how really the one pose of character allows me to animate them in nearly any single way. Sometimes you do have to make more drawings to fulfill different looks, but yeah, mostly, you know, T-pose is a really good standard pose to help create animation. Yeah.
Great. So when you're doing these, do you actually start by sketching by hand, or you sketch, or do you do the first drafts straight onto the computer?
Every animation is different. For this one in particular, the sketching happened at the start, actually, before I translated it all onto the computer. So I'll sketch some looks of how I want the characters to be. So I've got a little notepad of sketches and faces. But once it gets into animation, I actually just pose it in my animation program, and yeah, and so I just kind of work with it. Sometimes it's funny in the studio. Sometimes we'll actually act out the animation. So sometimes I'll be sitting at my desk and I'll just start like reaching for something in the air, and you can't actually there's nothing there, but I just want to try and like establish in my head how an arm would move in that situation, or where the fingers would go, or that sort of thing. So I guess it's kind of like in my head, and then I'll pop it into keyframes.
You become hyper aware of how the body moves, and so I don't pay attention to that kind of detail, but I guess you're paying attention to whether people lead with their hand or an elbow or a shoulder or those.
Oh, totally. I am always looking out for different walk cycles when I'm out in public. Right. That's something that I've definitely noticed. A lot of people walk differently. A lot of people hold their weight differently. A lot of people hold their posture differently. So it's something really interesting to take note of. So when I'm animating, it's as realistic as I can make it.
So if you go to a party full of animators, they're not actually creepy. They're just plying their trade and learning how to do better animation.
Yeah, if you're walking along the street and someone's just taking notes, don't worry about it. It's just an animator.
Love it. Fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, and so I guess this is one of the scenes I've got in this stack. And so something for a scene like this that we really have to think of is making sure that the action is not taking away from the message. And so using the pointer and having that show the message makes it clear for your eyes to go to the message. And then when she looks at you, your eyes go to her face, and then now you can register the character. Yeah.
I've got a question. I'm just going to jump in with a question. How many designer animators do we work with, and do they collaborate, or do you work individually? So I guess two questions there.
So yeah, I guess every team is different. We have 3 full-time animators. Sometimes we get other animators to help with stacks, and so usually they'll be freelance, but mostly it's just our studio team. So there's the 3 of us and our creative director and our producer, and yeah, we all work together in some aspects. So in the briefing aspect, we'll work together. When we are trying to brainstorm ideas, it's always really, really good to be collaborative, and so that's a process that we're definitely trying to push. Even now, we're trying to make sure that we can get a lot of brainstorming sessions in to get lots of good ideas, because more heads are better than one.
Exactly. And I should say, I was going to jump in. There's another question we've got from Glenn, who's asked us, and it's related. How do you take the animation and make it customizable? Do the animators work with coders to make it usable for the customers? Which is a great question, Glenn. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people from start to finish that help make the animation possible. So in fact, everyone, we've got producers and our creative director who help definitely come up with the brief. It's the animators that, do animation. We've got a whole lot of devs who I don't know how they do what they do, but they make it work. And that's so awesome, because if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't even be up. So definitely I'm actually not sure how many devs we have now. We've got quite a lot. We've got a lot of them in Hobart, Tasmania, if anyone doesn't know. And so then once that's done, obviously, it goes through, we have to get templates made, and we have to make sure that, the copywriting, I guess, for the templates, make it so that people can actually understand what we're trying to make these stacks for, which is a huge task in itself. And then I guess, yeah, we have to showcase it to the world and make sure everyone can see it. And, so yeah, there's so many people involved really with making an animation.
Yeah, I think we've got some good examples right at the end we can show that'll demonstrate that. So I won't take any more questions and distract you, Kayli. You keep going with your demonstration.
All good, all good. So yeah, I'm just showing some more examples. So this is kind of just one that I wanted to show that even though we have full body characters in a stack, we're not always, constricted to that. So this one worked really well by having just the hands in the frame. And so this is really good to show text on screen. So if you want to have a URL, which I think this was kind of designed for, but you could really have it for anything. But definitely any call to actions would be really good for this frame. And yeah, you don't have to have like the full body in the frame as well.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so I guess lastly, one of the big parts of the animation process is once something is animated, we review how the animation looked and if it's meeting our brief and if it's matching our users. And so I'll just show you a few animations at the moment.
Great.
So I'll just run through it. So the ones on the left are actually the version 1 version of, I would say, the exact same frame or a similar frame. So the first one we designed with full scenes in mind. We found that this was actually quite limiting for our users, for one. So in the first example, you can see there's a guy with a calendar, and that in itself is a good message. Maybe you want to talk about time, maybe you want to talk about a deadline, but in the context of a kitchen, which is the scene I put him in, it was actually very limiting. So a lot of people were like, well, we want to talk about this, urgent thing we've got coming up, but having it in the kitchen was just a little bit too confusing. And so another good reason why we chose to strip it back too was not only that, but we also wanted to make sure that, when someone watches a video, that the message is very clear and legible. So stripping it away was a good way for us to make sure that the message was being received very fast, because a lot of the time when people show these videos, you don't always have the luxury of showing it 3 or 4 times. You want to make sure that the message is received in the first go. So
and that's the awesome thing about with Biteable, is that because you put that thought and that process and you're lending your experience to it, if I was left to my own devices, I'm going to put more and more and more into the scene. But because you've learned, you test, you put best practice, what might seem like a restriction when you're using Biteable is actually Kayli guiding you through her professional lens about the best way to put the scene together. So I like that, because I think this is a good demonstration of the value that Biteable adds, because we've got real animators with real experience doing the work. But on the downside, and this is what always I can't get, is that when I look at this, I see all the work you put into designing the kitchen, the fridge, and the fruit and the flower, and then all of that didn't make it. So that's all in a digital trash bin somewhere, and you put all that hard work in. I couldn't live with that. I feel so sorry.
Yeah, there is a pretty huge digital trash bin actually, because we do definitely go through a lot of iterations for each frame, each scene that we have. So it's not just these 3, there's hundreds that we have. So there's quite a lot of assets that we go, okay, maybe not, but at the end of the day, it makes for a better look. And I think what I really want at the end of the day is for a successful animation that people really love. So that's something that I can live with.
Perfect. Brilliant. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at the time, and this is the difficult thing. We could talk for ages. So we're getting close to half an hour. So rather than go back and do Q&A, because I think we kind of took a lot of the questions during the show, maybe we'll jump straight into our Biteable in the wild segment while you're doing your screen share, and we'll keep it here.
Yeah, well, I've got it up. We do have a video that we found in the wild. So this is actually one of the corporate videos of the example that I showed at the start. And so I think this was published in a Facebook group about networking. And so I'll just play it now.
So this is Glenn, who's obviously a Biteable customer who's built this. And what I love about it is this is Kayli seeing somebody using her templates and her scenes and her stack and using it in their business. But yeah, I look at this and I think the colors work really well because he's obviously trying to get trust across. So the blue is kind of like the IBM blue. It's not exactly the same, but blue is trust, blue is money, blue is security. And you can see there he's got the screen into the laptop, which is a classic case of the programmers working with the designers. So it's a good use of the template stack there.
Yeah, I think he's done a really good job. I think the headings look awesome. I think usually this stack is really successful when you use like medium range things. I think sometimes some of the colors can get a little bit lost, but yeah, like every scene I think is working super well. That's always a worry. We're like, I guess is this message going to come across right when we make it? And yeah, he's totally gotten exactly what we were trying to say. So yeah, seeing this is just totally awesome. And sometimes it freaks me out actually seeing my animations out there in the wild. But it's a really good feeling that people are using what you make.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's look, I think this is used really well. And also, Glenn's used the suggestions in your animations and the locks in the right situations. So I kind of imagine when he was putting it together, he probably pulled some kind of inspiration, I guess, from your designs to help tell that story. So it wasn't like he had to start with a blank page. He was able to take your template and easily tell his story behind that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to try and make the process as easy as possible. And so we're working really hard to make sure that we have enough content to be released with every stack so that, it's that process is super easy. You just come in and, you find a scene that you think will work with the message and select your colors. So yeah, all that work is kind of done on this side of things in the studio team.
Fantastic. All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing your screen there.
That's all right.
It's you're talking at your screen and then people are watching at the same time. So I think, look, that's been super informative for me. I know that. I always learn new things when I talk to the animators, and I think I'm probably like most people. I think I can be blamed for underestimating how much work you put in behind the scenes. So I know from my point of view, I'm really keen to bring some of the other animators in who will probably watch this and now be going, oh, no, please not me next, Jared. But I think it's great to show the person behind the work because the scenes can just, not that they're lifeless, but they're just, they're digital. There's not a real person there. So, no, it's absolutely fantastic. And I think from my point of view, I'm very keen to get more animators on in future Biteable Facebook Live shows anyway. So thank you for being the first.
No worries.
So to everyone who's tuned in or to everyone who's watching on the replay, because the video stays up on our Facebook page, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do have more questions you'd like to do or stack suggestions you'd like Kayli to build for you, the comments stay open, so throw them in there. Someone from Biteable will monitor them and we'll do our best to answer them as we can. As always, thank you so much for joining in. Please, like, share, add comments, subscribe to the event so you know when each of the shows are coming on. And that's basically it from us. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate you coming on, Kayli. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's it for this week, and we'll see you next week on Facebook. Thanks so much. Goodbye.
Bye.